This week, Elon Musk has revolutionized cars, space, travel, and technology. Is journalism in his sights next? Another week, another public school board giving the green light to graphic sexualized literature in school libraries. And the heartwarming story of an Iowa community rallying around a flooded Christian school. These stories and a lot more on deck this week on The Lion Week in Review. Welcome into this week's edition of The Lion Week in Review. It's a weekly look at the culture, the courts, your state capitol, and your kids. I'm Chris Stegall. Now, let's meet our panel. Some of the men and women behind the stories at readlion.com. Josh Mann, our managing editor. Michael Ryan, executive editor, and Valerie Cabana, media contributor here at The Lion. Welcome, panel.
Thank you.
We dive in this week with the Trump-Elon Musk press conference, if you want to call it a digital press conference, 2 hours on the heels of an open 1 hour press conference, sort of a free-for-all at Mar-a-Lago. Michael, I'll start with you. Is this the new way forward in politics, sitting down and just let her rip?
Well, users of X sure think so. You know, if leftist politicians and legacy media hadn't thoroughly discredited themselves already, they certainly did with their meltdown over the Musk-Trump conversation. There was a European Union commissioner who wrote a letter threatening Musk not to do it. The Washington Post apparently designated it misinformation before it even happened and asked the White House what they could do about it. And Kamala Harris, this is nutty, even called it Elon's attempt to seize our democracy. Well, thankfully, all of those people were totally irrelevant. This thing touched in some form or fashion 1 billion people. Catherine Herridge, formerly of Fox News and CBS, did an online investigation and report on Homeland Security agents being actually disciplined for blowing the whistle on this department violating the law at the border. It looked like a 60 Minutes interview, but it's certainly something they would never do today. One of the users on X said after the Musk-Trump talk that the legacy media are officially dead. And if so, it's the internet and the media's own corruption that killed it.
It is interesting, Valerie. Is this the new way forward? Are we looking at a media that the traditional space of, doing the interview with the formal network reporter, is that done? I heard you reviewing the Elon Trump interview yourself in the halls of the offices just yesterday. Is that the new way forward?
Yeah, we'll surely see. So it's really sad that mainstream media is conveying Republicans and conservatives in such a negative light. You can take one headline and two different candidates, and the Democratic is going to be conveyed positively. The Republican is going to be displayed negatively. For instance, let me give you this tweet from CBS. We're going to start with one in June. So in June, they tweeted, "Former President Trump vows to stop taxing tips. This would cost the federal government up to $250 billion over 10 years, according to a nonpartisan watchdog group." Just 2 days ago, after Kamala has decided that she's going to do no tax on tips, this is the tweet that they made. It says, "Vice President Kamala Harris is rolling out new policy position, saying she'll fight to end taxes on tips for service and hospitality workers." Two different people, two different tweets. Why is that?
Josh Mann, I just wonder, you've been in the journalism game for a while now, and I have to wonder, regardless of bias, I think we all understand people have their biases, that's one thing, but to just flatly ignore or allow a presidential candidate to ignore you, I get the sense this week maybe even, that media is starting to crack a little bit. They're showing their frustration with that. I think maybe even a little embarrassed. Wouldn't you be as a journalist?
Yeah, I hope so. I hope there's some shame. I mean, at the end of the day, I think there's got to be enough self-respect for the profession to say, this is our job. And, the American people deserve this. The First Amendment is so important. Press freedom in this country is so important. The Washington Post wants to say democracy dies in darkness. Well, let's shine some light on our presidential candidate who is been the vice president now for, going on her fourth year and was labeled the most liberal senator before that. we need to know more, and she needs to answer questions. I think the American public deserve that, no matter who the candidate is.
Well, you can rest assured journalism happens at readline.com at the very least. Valerie, we turn to Kentucky now, where another school district, this is not new to this show, and stories on the line like this have popped up before. Another Kentucky school district, or I should say another district, this one in Kentucky, accused of potential election engineering. What do you know?
Yeah, so this is a big deal because school districts are not allowed to use public funds to favor any type of ballot measures, and it's looking like this school district might have done so. And Corey DeAngelis is actually the one who unveiled this, made it big. Now it's public knowledge. As of this morning, we got the news that they have taken down their posts. The posts are actually against school choice. So they are saying, hey, do not vote for this. We don't want school choice. We know Corey, he's a school choice advocate. He is fighting for funding students, not systems. So I'm really thankful for his work. And to any school district that thinks that you're going to be able to accomplish this without Corey finding out and exposing you, you're wrong.
Josh, it does seem like they're not getting away with it quite like they used to. I don't know how commonplace it is. I know you've covered these quite often. I think it's caveat emptor with these guys. If they decide to wade into it, the odds of them getting caught are much greater now.
That's right. I mean, we've covered some instances in Texas on school bond issues, and one here in Missouri. You especially see it when schools are raising money through bonds. They're supposed to only be able to share information. And, it makes sense that a district's going to have some key information about what are their property needs, what are the needs, asset needs, capital needs of the school district. But what they cannot do is use district resources to campaign for these things. And that's pretty clearly what they did. This was an amendment, a constitutional amendment that came out of the legislature earlier this year, which is on the ballot in November, that really all it does is pave the way so that if the legislature wants to pass school choice, it can. So it is basically removing this archaic Blaine Amendment, so-called Blaine Amendment from the Constitution, to just pave the way. It's not allowing, it allows school choice, but it doesn't make it happen. And so they said, vote no on Amendment 2. I mean, that was the graphic that was shared all over the school websites as well as their social media. And the AG came out yesterday basically and said, he gave an advisory to all school districts saying that kind of behavior violates state law.
One of the things that is at least my personal favorite thing about The Lion, and you go to readline.com, you get hard-hitting news, but you also get really feel-good stories. Warm, touchy-feely stories. And I mean that in the best sense, Michael, like this story in Iowa, a Christian school that flooded and then the community rallies around it. Tell us about it.
Yeah, and they did rally around this school, Rock Valley. In fact, another Christian school, Whole Christian, actually paused its own fundraising for its own building to help out. I love what one of them said. There's enough in today's world that is seeking to divide us and would like nothing more than for a Christian school to not do well or to not keep enrolling kids or keep growing. And so we've got to stick together around that and just remember that we're better together. One of the things I've long thought is that nations have borders, or at least I'm told they have borders. States and counties have lines. Cities have limits. But you know what? Communities have none of those things. Communities have no boundaries. And these people in Iowa just proved that.
Josh, it seems when you actually talk to members of any community, particularly smaller ones, they're grateful for Christian schools. I know I just recently interviewed someone in the Bloomington, Illinois area who lost their church to a fire, and the community rallied around them to keep their Christian school going and growing. And there are many other Christian schools in their area, but they don't view them as competitors. They value the presence as an alternative.
Yeah, it's amazing, really. When you look at what Christian schools have to do, they have to raise their own funds. They're really only supported by their own communities, their constituents, the parents of children who come to the school. And so when a disaster like this happens, they don't really have any government backstop. And so just the fact that other Christian schools who by the way, do in some sense compete technically for students and even in sports and things, come together because they believe in offering an education with Christian values. And so I think what America needs to understand is that not only are Christian schools growing, but that there is something about these communities and the culture at these schools that parents need to take a hard look at when they're making these educational decisions for the children. And this school in Iowa and this group of schools sets a great example, and I think parents have a lot to learn from it.
Well, which brings us to the next story today, which is kind of the perfect setup and the perfect advertisement for private Christian schools today, and that's what's going on in St. Joe. We have covered the St. Joseph, Missouri School District frequently. It's a very troubled school district, Josh Mann. I'll let you kick off with this story. More details of more trouble there.
Yeah, the district had a meeting just this week in which they basically spent an hour talking about and eventually deciding whether or not to reinstate a book called The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison in the library. So back in December or so, there were some complaints about some books that were in the St. Joe School District Library that had adult content and may violate state law. And the Lion wrote a story in May actually about 9 of those books, and this one was at the top. There's a passage in this book that is so graphic, I'd be unwilling to read it right here. In fact, it's in our article, but we used a graphic warning before we even quoted it. It is an incestuous rape scene of an 11-year-old girl by her father, and it's very graphic. In the end, this school board voted 4-3 to take a review committee's recommendation to keep it on the library shelf without restriction. So if a parent wants to disallow their child from being able to check that book out, the only way they can do it is to go in, and the onus is on the parent to go in and make that request that their child not be allowed to check it out. And so the 3 board members who voted against the book not only had problems with the explicit content, but also with the parent notification policy that really makes it a parent have to figure out what books to exclude or to not allow their child to do.
Valerie, this is often politically called a book ban. You often hear people say, oh, you just don't want kids to read. What's the motivation in your view behind this? It's purely a guess. I'm just asking your opinion.
Well, this book needs to be banned because it talks about things so bad that if we said it, YouTube would take it down. And I understand that there are pieces of literature that are in this, but when we're talking about a book ban, we are talking about books that have explicit content that is not appropriate for children. Some of this is porn, and some of this is scenes like Josh just described in this book, and some of these are ideology books that frankly don't belong in schools. And if parents want to teach those things at home, so be it.
Michael, this is not the first time we've talked about a story like this, but I always am sort of interested in the why. What drives the insistence that books like this appear in young people's libraries?
Well, I think there's 2 tiers to it. Number one, there's an agenda on some people's part to get these books into the hands of children. And then I think underneath that is a blind allegiance among, especially librarians, to just throw out anything that is published. And we don't do that with any other media. I mean, they talk about these books supposedly being banned. Nobody talks about movies being banned when we put a rating on those to keep 17 and under out. Nobody talks about cigarettes or alcohol being banned because we don't let children get access to them. I myself, acting on a tip, found a book in the local library for toddlers who can't even read yet called The Gay BCs, which taught the alphabet using sexual terms. It's one thing, these books are indefensible, so they really try to make an issue out of the people who are objecting to them, they're not the issue. The books are the issue. But it's one thing not knowing what's in the books. It's another thing knowing what's in them and keeping them in there. It's kind of a middle finger to the parents.
And our final story is actually one of your editorials, Michael. We'll stay with you on this. You think deeply and often about the future of the country, and as we are in a presidential election cycle, you've been talking about the future of the country and what we can do to save it. Love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, thank you for that. I've been making a study of civics for many years now as an editorial writer in newspapering. And you look around, patriotism is somewhat passé. Making America great again is now a slur somehow. The U.S. flag triggers people. You can't wear it if you're in a dance competition. And have you seen the street videos where people are asked on the street about basic civics and U.S. history? People don't know how and when we were founded. They don't even know how this country ticks, what makes it work today. Basically, I've come to the conclusion that our civic infrastructure is collapsing. And if it was a bridge, we'd get out and fix it. And I don't know why we don't fix our civic infrastructure. So, I put together a very short ebook called You Rule, and we're serializing it on the Lion right now in 10 columns. And it basically is to get people informed and excited about our system of government. A great author, Eric Metaxas, talks about the fact that we're not properly astonished by the system of self-governance that we have. We aren't, and we need to be.
And Josh, isn't that the point of so many of the discussions we have on this show is education? It starts with education, kids learning the very basics in civics.
That's right. I mean, what we're seeing in polls and studies of people, Americans, but especially young people, are not only do they not know, but they don't care. They don't know what they don't know. And so once you start to realize what power you have as a citizen of this country, and what's at stake if you don't exercise your rights and you don't exercise the privilege to vote, to be involved, to maybe run for political office, and to understand the freedoms that are protected in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, then, there's so much at stake and so much to lose. We talked earlier in the show about how the power brokers and the media, this whole landscape is changing. I think democracy depends on it, and so I'm glad that Michael has written this book. I think it's important, and I hope that young people and all Americans will realize how important it is that we get involved, stay involved, and understand what's going on. And so I hope they read The Lion to help them do that.
Valerie, your job here inside the Herzog Foundation, not just contributing to The Lion, but you also handle a lot of our social media, and social media obviously is what drives so much of the conversation anymore. Michael said a lot of people don't know what makes America tick, but they know a lot about TikTok. I know that. That drives so much of what people think these days. Can that be changed, or this is the new way forward?
We'll see. We have X, which is run by Elon, and he is doing an incredible job of keeping speech free. But we also have other platforms that are run by Meta, and Meta doesn't care if they censor you or not. So you can put down something that maybe they don't like, and they're not going to feed it to the algorithm. People aren't going to see it. Whereas TikTok, that's the easiest way to go viral. So we'll just see what happens. I know that social media is evolving and it is developing, and it's not always a bad thing. But truth in journalism, truth in media should be a priority.
Our favorite articles of the week. It's that time in the show where I ask the panel what their favorite particular story is at readlion.com. Josh, we start with you this week.
Well, we've got one on Neil Gorsuch was interviewed by Ben Shapiro at Daily Wire about one of his books, and just along these ideas of civics, how important it is that young people are educated on how the system of governance works. And one of his big concerns is overregulation in this country and all of the court cases that creates and the litigation. And so he actually has a number of really practical resources that parents and schools and families can use to help teach their kids about civics involvement.
Valerie, your favorite this week?
Yes, I'm actually going to do two. I'm going to break the rules. I have to shout out Michael, my colleague, and his newest book that we are featuring on The Lion. It's on Amazon. It's 99 cents. Go check it out. And then next, it's the heartfelt story that we talked about with the Iowa Christian School. And it's just really incredible to see a community rallying around this school because they know it's for a good cause. They know that this school is shaping the future of America with these children. And so they had it all done in a Saturday. That was really incredible to me, coming from 5 feet from below. Water is what I mean by that. And so it's just really great to see.
Michael Ryan, your favorite story this week?
Well, Valerie, thanks for the shout out. I'll get you that $5 later. And I would tie this to and I'm going to cheat too because I'm going to steal Valerie's point with this flooded Christian school that the community rallied around. I tie it into civics because this is a civics lesson. This is community. And it's not just a lesson for parents, as Josh so aptly pointed out. It's a lesson for us all.
Feel good show this week. I like it. We'll wrap on a positive note. That's the kind of stuff you get at the Lion every week. Check it out. As for us, that'll do it this week. Be sure to keep up to date on all the latest news every single day at readlion.com. For all of us here at the Lion, thanks for downloading the show, and we'll see you next time.